Hello, and welcome back to the Audible Finish, a weekly show discussing the week gone by in the world of wrestling. My name is Dimitri Kalos, and I am your host for this series. In this week's episode, we will delve into the events from WWE's post-SummerSlam Smackdown and Raw episode from this week, headlined by Jey Uso seemingly quitting WWE. We will also look into what happened on AEW's Collision and Dynamite shows, with Eddie Kingston and Will Ospreay returning to set up their positions on the All-In Wembley card, which is rapidly gaining momentum. I am joined by my co-host for the Audible Finish, Thanasi. Pleasure to have your company, Thanasi.
Always a pleasure to be around.
All right, well, Thanasi, let's get straight into it, and we're going to start off with what happened on SmackDown. So do you want to take us through what happened on SmackDown this week?
I'll take everyone through SmackDown. Let's just deliver some quick-fire results first before getting into some of the night's highlights in more depth. So the show opener was Asuka versus Charlotte, which ended in a no contest following interference from the new women's champion Io Sky. More on this to come in a bit. AJ Styles defeated Karrion Kross following the Styles clash for a big Canadian pop as they were in Calgary. Edge had an in-ring promo with Sheamus to set up the match for next week's 25th anniversary. LA Knight delivered blunt force trauma on Top Dollar before cutting a quick promo. Rey Mysterio surprised us all by not only replacing Santos Escobar in a US title match against Theory, but he won the title. And the main event of the evening was the Bloodline segment where, as you said, Dimitri, Jey laid out everyone before ending on a cliffhanger, leaving his future in the WWE in doubt. Let's take a look at some of the night's highlights in a bit more depth now. It was a good showing from SmackDown for the post-SummerSlam reset show. It was a quite enjoyable viewing, I think it's fair to say. The show's opener, like I said, was Charlotte against Asuka. Charlotte was really trying to play the babyface in this match. Her offense dominated Asuka, including a top rope, a tope suicida, a diving crossbody off the top rope, as well as a forward cartwheel clothesline. And then Damage Control arrived during the match to the ringside area. And as we approach the finish, Asuka hits the two-legged jawbreaker, the codebreaker-like maneuver, which is followed by Io Sky hitting a springboard dropkick to both competitors to force the DQ and commence an assault. The segment finishes with Damage Control standing triumphantly tall. AJ Styles and Karrion Kross, they had a good TV match in the middle of the show. We see a lot of high-flying attempts by the veteran AJ Styles, but one of the more impressive moves of the match saw Kross hit a Death Valley driver onto the announce table. And then AJ hit a corner springboard moonsault with an awkward landing. It didn't look like they actually managed to pull that off, but he did well to improvise to turn that into an inverted DDT. I think Karrion Kross was actually supposed to catch him there. But following a skirmish on the outside between Scarlett Bordeaux and Michin Mia Yim, AJ hits an enziguri and performs the Styles Clash for the 1, 2, 3. Edge now gets an in-ring promo segment in his home country where the crowd is utterly electric for the bloke. He says Sheamus is actually one of the reasons that he wanted to get back in the ring. And he even had Sheamus stay at his house to help him get in shape for the return. Sheamus then comes out accompanied by the Brawling Brutes, and he shows the footage of Edge stacking it during their episode of his YouTube show. And he even shows the bruising on Edge's bare ass, with Sheamus lovingly pointing out that Edge has shown a lot more on live TV than just his bare ass. And then after Adam, John, Edge, McEnroe, Copeland demands that Sheamus answers his question, the Irishman accepts the challenge to set up their first ever singles matchup. This was a really wholesome segment, Dimitri, because Sheamus pointed out that when he first tried to break into the WWE at a Dublin house show, only Edge gave him any attention, even being so kind as to buy him a pint of Guinness. So it was really lovely to see these guys. Before we get to the main event, I just want to pay some attention to the US title match. Theory had been attacking Santos Escobar, specifically on the leg all night, to prevent the match from going ahead. But as he did so on the entranceway, Adam Pearce decided to sub in Rey Mysterio, and Rey delivered a 619 to the lower back early in the match. So when he tried to hit a proper 619 and Theory caught him, he was unable to bring him up for the Fireman's Carry A-Town down. So Mysterio hit a Hurricane Rana, 619, West Coast Pop, hooks the leg, and we have a new US champion. He even got Pyro on the ramp with his LWI buddies. It was a little bit out of nowhere, to be honest. But now we have Dominic Mysterio as the North American champion, Rey Mysterio, the United States champion. Interesting family affair. They dominate that part of the continent. And also, Rey has the distinction of having held singles gold across 4 different decades over WWE and WCW. Now, time for the main event. This was the big one. Roman and Solo, as well as a triumphant-looking Paulie, come to the ring. Jimmy arrives without music in his all-black gear to a very loud Canadian "You sold out" chant. He declares what he did had nothing to do with Roman. And then Jey enters, coincidentally wearing basically the same gear as his twin, even down to the bloody gold chain. It's almost as if they're Mediterranean rather than Samoan. But anyway, Jimmy declares he did what he did because, not for The Rock, because he loves Jey. And he didn't want him to be corrupted by power like the a-hole Roman Reigns. And ironically, the crowd actually decides to call him this in response. Jimmy says that he didn't do it to step on his twin's shin, but because on his shine, but because he loves him. So super kick me if you must, he says. And at this point, Roman is full in the background. He's nodding like, yes, do it. Super kick him, go do it. Jey instead turns his back on his brother, who now exits the ring disappointed, as the tribal chief starts cackling, "I told you so." And he demands that Jey acknowledge him, and he eats a super kick for his troubles. Jey dodges Solo's spike and gives him a super kick too. Jey even reverses Roman's spear into a super kick and spear quickfire combo. He calls out to Jimmy now, calls out to him to say, "Hold up," brings him back to the ring, and he goes for what seems like it's going to be a reconciliatory embrace, but he actually just delivers yet another super kick. So it's a super kick party here. Jey declares to the camera, he's out of the bloodline, out of Smackdown, and out of the WWE. He exits through the crowd, leaving us on a cliffhanger ending. And he's actually already been moved to the alumni section of WWE.com, really keeping in line with kayfabe there. So I'll say this, though. It was a weak excuse to end SummerSlam without justification. I did it because I loved you. I think it was weak, personally. I know that these boys would love a WrestleMania singles match. I did see a clip, I think, where they were with Chris Van Vliet on YouTube, where they were saying that they would love to have a WrestleMania match against each other. And I don't know what they're setting up for now, but the reports online are for Payback, not WrestleMania, with Rikishi as the special guest referee. And it leaves a lot of questions now for where this leaves Roman following his SummerSlam injury. But we'll have to see what happens on the next episode. But that's our SmackDown recap, Dimitri. Thank you.
Yes. Well, to add on a couple points there, what do we think is the best course of action for Jey coming out of this? Because essentially, he's said that he's quit, but for all of us, we can't help but feel like surely that's a ruse. So is this him getting some time off? Do we maybe see him do a couple months off, get some break? Does he even perhaps wait until the Rumble and then do a shock appearance there? But now you're telling me about this payback and this payback situation, and quite frankly, that would be vastly disappointing if he claimed to quit and then a couple weeks later comes back. And I mean, it would be like Punk all over again in 2011, seemingly quitting WWE and returning 8 days later. What do you think is the best course of action? How would you, in your ideal situation, see this unfold?
Well, I'll throw you a bit of a weird one. I do agree that the best thing for him to do would be to come back around the turn of the new year and set up a feud with Jimmy. Maybe Jimmy, in the meantime, can work the mid-card scene, develop his singles game. I'm sure there are plenty of opportunities there. It's a big, massive product. Maybe even give him a stint in NXT, but really develop that singles run and then set them up for the WrestleMania match. If you want to put Rikishi as the special guest referee there, that's fine. But I'll throw you an odd one. What if, until Royal Rumble season, Jey Uso is all elite? Have him show up in London at Wembley, and make him top of the world. What do you reckon?
Look, we're gonna get to All In later on, but that show is packed enough as it is already, so I don't think it needs a Jey Uso shock appearance. Although I think it's if there's anything right now that would collectively make everyone's jaws drop, it's probably that. Moving on from SmackDown, we have this week's Raw. A quick rundown of what happened on this week in Raw. The show started with a promo segment with the Judgment Day minus Finn Balor, which annoyed Damian Priest. JD McDonough joined them to deliver a message from Finn saying to worry about their real targets, which were Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes. Sami came out and attacked JD McDonough, and this led into their match, which saw Sami Zayn emerge victorious despite his injured left arm. Backstage, Adam Pearce engaged with Chelsea Green, suggesting she would have to give up the tag team titles due to Sonya Deville's injury, though Piper Niven returned and proclaimed herself Green's new partner, beating up, I believe, Katana Chance and Kaden Carter in the process, who were seeking to fight for the titles themselves. Next up, we had some action between Imperium and Alpha Academy. So Chad Gable beat Giovanni Vinci, followed by Gunther defeating Otis in an impromptu match. Later in the night, the match between Chad Gable and Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship was set for next week on Raw. After that, we had Matt Riddle and Drew McIntyre team up and beat the Viking Raiders, and later on, they met with the New Day backstage and set up a match for next week. We then had an all-Aussie affair between Rhea Ripley and Indy Hartwell, with the Women's World Champion coming out on top, though she was attacked by both her opponent and Candice LeRae post-match in what is continuing this conflict between Rhea Ripley, Raquel Gonzalez, and her friends. Next, Shinsuke Nakamura had an in-ring interview with Michael Cole, in which he explained his attack on Rollins as his way of getting into the world title picture. Rollins came out and gave Shinsuke what he wanted, a chance at his World Heavyweight Championship. The Miz spoke with Byron Saxton backstage and said next week he'll beat someone on Raw better than any wrestler LA Knight ever has, which was followed by Trish Stratus versus Becky Lynch, which finished in a double count-out and brawling in the crowd. Adam Pearce announced later that a rematch will be set at a later time to take place inside a steel cage to get a conclusive resolution to this rivalry. The main event saw Cody Rhodes beat Finn Balor, though the Judgment Day still finished Raw on top with a post-match beatdown of the American Nightmare and Sami Zayn, with an assist from JD McDonough. My first highlight for Raw this week is the Rollins Nakamura segment. And this commenced with Shinsuke Nakamura having an in-ring interview with Michael Cole. He did lots of replies in Japanese and short bursts in English. And the translations were quickly put out online to understand exactly what Shinsuke was referring to. And essentially, he wants to be a world champion. And he felt that attacking Seth was the easiest way to put himself back in the world title picture, back in the focus, where he feels he belongs. Seth came out, decided that he should give him that match for the title because that gives him a chance to also get even with Shinsuke after he attacked him and ambushed him, as he put it. He asks Shinsuke to shake his hand, which Nakamura obliges, before Shinsuke whispers something in Rollins' ear, which seemingly concerned him, before then sneaking behind Rollins and hitting him with a Kinshasa. This was a very interesting segment, and I think the whisper is what really made it compelling, because now there's this mystery as to what exactly did Nakamura do to set Rollins off his game. So I say, what did you make of this interaction?
I thought that this was the most intriguing part of the segment, and I'll put it this way: whatever Shin said, they didn't want us to hear it, because WWE has actually started miking up even when the wrestlers are not holding their microphones, right? So the final part, the conclusion of SmackDown, Jey did not grab the microphone so that the crowd wasn't hearing what he was saying. Everyone at home was hearing what he was saying. In this instance, neither the crowd nor the audience from home heard what Nakamura was saying. I think maybe this will lead to something, perhaps later down the track. I don't think it was, potentially he was just saying, you're wearing your wife's shirt, you need to stop. But I digress. In principle, I really like this. This is interesting because Seth did look very disconcerted. And that's why he took his eyes off the ball. This is all in storyline. I want to see where we're going with this. But I'm very interested to see Shinsuke Nakamura as a good heel. He was a heel in NJPW. He did it really well. In WWE, he's shown that he can be a really good heel as well. But let's see where they take this.
The next highlight I have is the main event, which saw Cody Rhodes versus Finn Balor, and then I'm going to add into this the Judgment Day development from the show as well. So the match started off as it always does, the two competitors getting into the thick of things, and then very quickly Rey Mysterio and Rhea Ripley come out and help Balor gain control of the match. There was a nice moment where Cody Rhodes hits the disaster kick, and that was for a 2 count, and then Priest followed suit and came out. And Cody went for the crossroads numerous times in the match, but every time it seemed to get reversed. He went for a Cody cutter as well at one point, which got reversed. Finn drop kicked him into the corner to set up for the coup de grace, but Cody rolled inside to avoid it. He went for a crossroads again at this point, which got reversed, but he finally lands the Cody cutter. At this point, Mysterio interferes to allow Balor to regain control of the match. Balor hits a superplex for a near fall. Mysterio throws a chair into the ring for Balor to use, but the official gathers it and tries to throw it out. At this point, Rhea Ripley was distracting the official as he was trying to get rid of the chair, and Priest threw in his briefcase for Balor to use, but it very, very comedically went through his legs and landed in Cody's hands, and Cody clocks both Balor and Priest with the briefcase before grabbing Balor, finally landing the crossroads he'd been trying to do the whole match for the win. Immediately afterwards, the Judgment Day swarmed the ring and attacked Cody. Sami Zayn came out to try and help Cody and get the Judgment Day off of him, but then JD McDonough comes out to attack Sami Zayn, and then the numbers game really played up for the two valiant baby faces, and Judgment Day end Raw on top once again. I found as a main event, it was serviceable, but I think what I enjoyed about it is we're starting to build this recurring theme now, which is Damian Priest inadvertently screwing Finn Balor out of his matches, which from a standpoint of wanting to see Balor succeed is disappointing, but from the building miscommunication storyline we're getting through those two in the Civil War, I think it's a nice little touch where before they truly implode against as a group, the Judgment Day is still dominant. And I think there's a very interesting storyline now with JD McDonough, who is seemingly trying to gain favor with the Judgment Day, having already got that connection with Finn Balor. So I think there is something extra that's building there, which is quite interesting. I'm very curious as to where they're taking this and if they're going to have a match at Payback featuring these same competitors, or if they're going to do something else. Honestly, what did you think of this part?
Look, I think we are developing ourselves into a recurring motif where we've got the biggest baby faces and the biggest heels all just kind of meshing in together, namely KO and Sami Zayn, Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins on the babyface side, and the Judgment Day on the heel side. We're starting at least to demarcate now, and we're separating Rollins from the pack. We've still got, for some reason, Sami Zayn consistently tagging with the remainder of the baby faces, which is specifically just Cody Rhodes now. But I would like to see some kind of a separation there and development into separated storylines. Even though the United Judgment Day, which they're not completely united now, but as a full entity, they are very, very strong. We can understand why they're in the main event. But I want a little bit more there from the tag side, I think.
And I think with the way they're building the New Day and the other tag teams on Raw, I'm starting to suspect that maybe we're going to see the end of the Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens title reigns soon, and it could be far more imminent than we expect. So let's now move on to the AEW side. And to start off with, we're going to talk about the Collision from last Saturday. Thanasi, do you want to take us through Collision?
Happy to do so. Once again, I'm just going to do the quick fire going down before we look at my top 3 for the night. So we open the show at the Greensboro Coliseum with Ricky Starks having an interview segment with Tony Schiavone. He's holding the belt from last week. Not a title belt, not the Owen Hart Cup belt. He's holding the actual belt that he used to whip Ricky Steamboat with. And he did so because he says Cena cost him the match, so he whooped his ass, even though he still loves him. So he's been suspended now for 30 days from wrestling. However, he's still going to be around on the show. He's got his manager's license, and he proclaims that he's going to set AEW on fire starting next week. We're getting a war. You want a war, Chico? We're getting a war. Next segment. The Acclaimed is in the house without daddy ass Billy Gunn. They're taking on the Iron Savages. Max Caster hits a springboard drop kick. He hits a Death Valley driver. We get Tandem Fame Asses hit for the victory. And then a promo is cut. The Acclaimed are on the way back to the top of the tag team division. Very briefly, we get a segment that makes me very slightly uncomfortable when BC Gold are backstage with Lexi, and Jay White proclaims that she's having some time with the Bang Bang Gang. I can't say I'm a big fan of that, but the next match on the card is Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander versus Mercedes Martinez and Diamante. More to come on this later. This one was in my top 3, but the heels did end up getting a victory in this one. We get Toni Storm backstage. She's a little bit out of sorts, but she's feeling a little bit better now with her place in the All-In Fatal 4-Way. We have the next segment is Samoa Joe versus Andrew Everett. Joe gets the win, but I'll come back to this a little bit more afterwards. We then get Captain Charisma, Christian Cage, the Father of the Year, coming out with Luchasaurus and the TNT title belt for a promo. Arn Anderson and Brock Anderson, his son, interrupt. And then we get Brock Anderson versus Luchasaurus for the TNT belt. Luchasaurus hits the stiff lariat to the back of the head for the victory, and then Darby Allin attacks with a skateboard stomp to the back. The match is set for next week, Darby versus Christian, and of course, Darby will be competing for the strap at All In. Next up, we get another in-ring interview segment. It's Powerhouse Will Hobbs. He has the Book of Hobbs with him, and he wants to redeem his loss of the TNT title and the Owen Hart Cup loss. And how does he do so? He calls out the Redeemer, Miro. This one's going to be a promising feud, I think. But let's see what they pull more out of it going forward. I think we haven't seen enough of Miro on the show, and it'd be good to see these two big guns go head to head. And of course, in the main event, we had CMFTR against the House of Black for the World Trios Championships. This one we'll come to in a little bit. But first of all, before we get to that, I just wanted to go through a little bit of the women's tag action. So we had Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander teaming up. Chris Statlander, of course, is the TBS champion against the heels Mercedes Martinez and Diamante. So the heels were in control for a great deal of this match. We saw some nice maneuver from the baby faces. There was a spine buster and Uranagi combo from Willow to set up a hot tag. Chris Statlander sweeps Diamante's legs to induce a reverse STO on Mercedes. So she actually swept the legs of her opponent, and Diamante was the one to hit that reverse STO on her tag partner. Mercedes hit a Razor's Edge on her opponents using Diamante this time. So she actually lifted Diamante into the Razor's Edge and flung her out of the ring for a kind of like a backwards suicide dive onto both of the babyfaces outside. Chris Statlander then hit a Fisherman's Buster Slam after Diamante delivers an FU. And when I say that, she was literally screaming out FU to Willow Nightingale as she chucked her out of the ring. But the finish of the match comes with the heels getting a roll-up win with Diamante using the legs to leverage Mercedes Martinez's pinfall on Willow. We get the win, 1, 2, 3. We saw some promising tag team action. I feel like the women do need a little bit more of a prime spot here on Collision. We have some really good talent here, but I just feel like we can get a little bit more out of them. I was just kind of looking for that meatiness that we see a little bit more of from Dynamite. The next highlight that I did want to go through was the Samoa Joe versus Andrew Everett match. There was a beautiful moment just as the bell was about to be rung at the beginning of this match, where Joe extends his hands and he starts to conduct the orchestra of the crowd as they start to chant, "Joe is going to kill you." We saw Everett hit a nice springboard maneuver, but he finds his footing on this because Joe actually moved away with this nope walk away. So he found his footing, but then Joe locks in the patented coquina clutch for the victory. Then he picks up the microphone, and like I said last week, every time Joe picks up the mic, we listen. And he's looking for the answer of a champion when he challenged CM Punk last week, but he was met with the deafening silence of a coward. And now he has to convince CM Punk what's going to happen moving forward. Joe does make an appearance later on in the match, but Dimitri, where do you see this heading, this Samoa Joe thing?
I mean, it has to be all in, doesn't it? I think especially with, and you're going to get into the way the main event finished, but I think you can tell it, and I think there is this viciousness coming across from Joe, which I'm very excited to see where it goes against Punk. But yeah, I'm very excited, and I believe that's where we're headed.
Well, as I foreshadowed, this does happen in the main event of the evening. So let's go through the main event in a little bit more depth. It was a nice juicy match that we got. So Jim Ross actually came out on special commentary, this match was for the World Trios Championships. The defending champions are the House of Black, but the other three on the other side of the ring also are belt holders. We have the World Tag Team Champions, FTR, and the Real World Champion, CM Punk. I did have a look. Last week, Punk wore a trans pride variation of his signature t-shirt. And this week, he has a SAG-AFTRA t-shirt in solidarity with the ongoing actors' strike underway in the United States. Aside from that, CMFTR do have uniform ring gear, and they start with some technical wrestling against Murphy. Overall, it's a bit of a slow start to the match. They're setting up, but it's a little bit slow in the beginning. The crowd was very, very hot for the Punk Malachi face-off. They both actually just sat down cross-legged. And that still managed to get pretty solid reaction from the crowd. The House of Black take control of this match, specifically on Dax Harwood. Punk successfully gets the hot tag to deliver some shoulder tackles, reminiscent of one John Cena, but then his own patented moveset, the swinging neck breaker, the leg lariat, the running Shining Wizard to the corner. But Malachi interrupts the elbow drop attempt, and Brody King hits a running corner senton to put his House of Black teammates back in control. CM Punk hits a GTS on a taunting Murphy to get a hot tag, and then Cash Wheeler delivers some drop kicks and power slams, followed by the corner strikes. No flips, just fists. We know how we like FTR. We get two double clotheslines by FTR. This is a move that we know a specific tag team is trying to hit, but they managed to hit two in this match. And then Cash hit a tope suicida on all three of his opponents. We get a diving bulldog for a near fall. And then we have a two-man superplex by FTR, followed by a diving elbow drop by CM Punk for a near fall. This was on Brody King, both of these moves. And then a two-man flapjack is lifted in for a shatter machine, CM Punk assisting, of course. And Murphy delivers a Meteora, Harwood hits a brainbuster, and Punk and Malachi hit simultaneous roundhouse kicks. But as we get to the finish of the match, it's a little bit of a letdown after all this offense. Brody gets a lariat on Dax for the victory, while Punk is actually busy on the outside getting choked out by the king of television, Samoa Joe. So the show closes with House of Black retaining the belts. Honestly, it was a little bit anticlimactic, the way that the show finished, but I think in principle, we're heading towards the right direction, and that is CM Punk versus Samoa Joe for an all-time classic at All In London. I am very, very keen for this. I don't know. What about you, Dimitri?
I am very keen, and I think we're going to be in for some very interesting in-ring action at All In, especially when we get into Dynamite very soon as to what is unfolding. I found this a good episode of Collision, but certainly not as strong as previous weeks. I feel like this one, it lacked a bit, and I think it was very much, it was a one-match heavy card for the most part. I think you could see that they dedicated, I think, 30 minutes plus potentially to the actual main event, which as a six-man, like, it can be done effectively, and I think it was done effectively in this episode, but it isn't the most compelling form of wrestling for me personally. I don't know about you. But I think overall, a solid episode of Collision. And I think, like I said last week, it's this consistency that we're seeing from the programming on Collision, which is really making me feel very confident about things.
And I think it's just important to note that, as you say, it was a very one-match heavy card. Even on the television shows, I do prefer to see a bit more of a mixed bag. But I think another thing to point out is that we got the tease last week of Punk versus Joe. We got another kind of tease as well, but most of this has all been wrapping up the Ricky Starks arc. There's not a lot of time before All In. Like, we need to have a really, really good confrontation in the ring between these two guys. Microphones, tables, contract signings, whatever. But we need to have a really, really good confrontation next week on Collision.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better. And hopefully we do see that quickly unravel so we can get hyped for the Wembley outing between the two. So to move on, we're going to talk about this week's Dynamite. And this week's Dynamite is the beginning of the special Fight for the Fallen, which they're doing for this week. The show started with Orange Cassidy successfully defending his AEW International Championship against Wheeler Yuta. Following the match, the BCC brawled with Cassidy and the Best Friends before the Lucha Brothers and a returning Eddie Kingston fought them away. Afterwards, Kingston grabbed the mic and challenged the BCC and 3 other competitors, whoever they can find, to a Stadium Stampede match at All In. We're getting Stadium Stampede once again. A pre-recorded interview between Jim Ross and Kenny Omega was shown afterwards, in which Omega got attacked by Konosuke Takeshita, Jay White, and Juice Robinson. Bullet Club Gold is targeting Kenny Omega. This was followed by Adam Page at the hospital saying that he, Omega, and Kota Ibushi are going to team up to face the trio at Wembley. So he was at the hospital taking care of his mate who got injured, and he's saying, no, we're not taking this. We're facing you at Wembley. Things went back live to the ring, where Jericho accepted Don Callis' offer to join his family, until he unveiled a picture that was in the ring of Callis holding Jericho's decapitated head. Takeshita and Will Ospreay, of all people, came in and then beat up Jericho, with Callis smashing the picture over Jericho's head. Later on, Chris Jericho challenged Will Ospreay officially at All In, looking to embarrass the Brit in front of his home faithful. Darby Allin and Nick Wayne then beat the Gates of Agony, which was followed by a pre-recorded video of MJF and Adam Cole preparing for Aussie Open, and I'll get into this a bit later in my highlights. The two then showed up live in the ring and had a promo exchange, sharing their respective stories and stressing they will each do everything possible to win at All In their singles match to main event the show. Jeff Jarrett then beat Jeff Hardy in a chaotic Texas Chainsaw Massacre death match. Again, something I'm going to get into a bit later. And Britt Baker defeated the Bunny to qualify for the 4-way AEW Women's World Championship match at All In. So now we've got that booked in. It's going to be Hikaru Shida defending her title against Saraya, Toni Storm, and Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. The Acclaimed were then attacked by the House of Black, having seemingly come out to try wrestle another match. And then the show finished with the Young Bucks beating the Guns. Post-match, Jay White and Juice Robinson attacked the Young Bucks, but FTR made the save and then stared down their competition for All In. We're very excited for that conclusive showing for what is going to be their third and potentially final outing against one another. To start off with, my first highlight is discussing everything that happened between Adam Cole and MJF on this show. Now, to begin, I want to talk about this pre-recorded video they did, which I think it's our duty to report on, given that essentially it was them talking about Australian culture and what it means to combat Aussies. So they start off, and MJF has said that they need to get themselves acclimatized to our cuisine, which apparently is Outback Steakhouse. Afterwards, Adam Cole suggests they watch Crocodile Dundee 1 and 2, but MJF quickly interrupts by showing him footage of 2 kangaroos fighting each other, which makes him think of a genius wrestling move, which is a kangaroo kick. which looks a bit more like a hop, but I digress. Afterwards, they go in and they double clothesline an AEW personnel, and this leads to them getting mouthed off at by none other than Tony Khan, the big boss. And I don't know about you, Thanasi, but watching this, it gave me vibes of, do you remember Patrick from Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed? Who's played by Seth Green, and he's very chill for the entire film, but he has one scene where he gets very angry at this man, scaring him, and it terrifies Scooby-Doo and Shaggy. I got complete vibes from that, just thinking this sweet, small man somehow intimidating these colossal wrestlers, these giants of the wrestling world. What did you think of this whole video?
Well, I think as far as this video goes, I had a few takeaways. One is indeed, as you say, TK was mouthing off at them. And maybe I haven't been watching enough AEW, but I'm pretty sure this is the first time we saw any kind of angry boss vibes from Tony Khan. He tries to stay away from the camera as much as he can as an on-screen role, kind of as a persona. But this was the first time that I think he actually yelled at someone like this in his on-screen AEW career. And if I can just make a couple of points about the Australian culture. I might be wrong here, but whenever I open up my menu log or my Uber Eats or my Deliveroo, which for our international listeners, these are all food delivery apps. You look at Outback Steakhouse, it's American cuisine. It's not Australian cuisine. It's probably the only restaurant you will go to in any country, definitely, certainly in Australia, that will give you this blooming onion fried thing, right, and call it Australian cuisine. It's not. Also, I love the fact that Adam Cole still looks at DVDs. That's my favorite thing. You know, when the world has moved on to Blu-ray and streaming services, Adam Cole's doing us proud with the disc. Love that. But yeah, we know that these guys have got great on-screen chemistry. So it was a good little segment for us as an introduction and as a bit of an appetizer for the in-ring promo.
I'm going to quickly touch as well on their promo segment in ring, which was also very captivating. And I think it was very unique in the sense that they're playing friends and then they basically just each took a chance to say, by the way, I want this and I want this more than you do. And I'm not going to stop at anything to get the AEW World Championship. I thought, given this storyline they're playing between the two, it was probably a nice little change up just to remind people that these are two world-class wrestlers that want to be at the top. I thought it was very nice. Obviously, Adam Cole made reference to the trials and tribulations he's gone through, especially in the last 9 months with the concussion injuries and the questions of whether or not he can ever wrestle again. And MJF, in classic fashion, had to one-up him and make it all about himself and the journey he's gone through in his career and how AEW and especially Cody Rhodes have played huge roles in giving him opportunities to really be allowed to prove himself as the best, and that through everything he's gone through, he cares more than anything about the World Championship and he's not going to relinquish that for anything. So I thought that was a really nice moment as well. And it's building excitement for this match. I believe the way they're going about it, there won't be any sort of turn until at the very least the night of, but maybe they'll prove us wrong next week. We'll see how this plays out right before All In. The next highlight I want to go into, and I think this is a good time to point out.
Can I just interrupt you there, Dimitri? I do just want to make this following point because, as you say, the turn that we're going to look at probably would be the night of, and I think that's really, really important to make a point about, because a lot of this storyline actually reminds me of the Shawn Michaels and John Cena storyline from 2007 when they were going for the belts. We had a lot of teasers with Shawn Michaels going to turn on John Cena because he always turns on his partner, and they didn't do it until the very, very last possible moment that they could have. They pushed it right to the end. And if you noticed in the segment, Cole was teasing the super kick on MJF after they chased Aussie Open out of the ring. Now, I don't think that's a coincidence. Yes, he loves the super kick, but I think we are getting shades of Shawn Michaels coming out here. And I think it means that they're going to win the belts on the 0 Hour show, and they're going to make a really big deal out of it.
Well, we'll see how that plays out. Certainly, I think putting those two on the 0 hour is going to make a lot more people tune in than would have otherwise. But yes, that is a good point to make. And I think just to reiterate, we have two betrayers here. I think one of the things with that Shawn Michaels John Cena storyline is we knew that John Cena squeaky clean wasn't going to do anything. Whereas here, for all we know, Adam Cole will go for the super kick, and then out of nowhere, MJF just clocks him with the diamond ring. And it'll happen in the exact same moment, and it's the two betrayers both going at it at the exact same time. But we'll see how that plays out next in the upcoming editions of Dynamite, potential Collision, and then eventually when we get to All In. And perhaps it might even be a situation where the turn doesn't even happen at All In, it happens afterwards. So who knows where we're going but with this, but everyone's very intrigued as to exactly how it's going to play out.
Oh, it's the best storyline, hands down.
The next highlight that I wanted to get into, and this was a moment for me to stress that our highlights of the week aren't necessarily going to mean good. Sometimes it's just going to mean it was batshit crazy, because I want to talk about this Texas Chainsaw Massacre death match. Now, firstly, it was advertised as a match between Jeff Jarrett and Jeff Hardy. It very quickly just turned into their respective factions going at it. And I found it absolutely bonkers. I couldn't believe it. I had to take down some notes, like truly to just, not just for my own purposes of just trying to refresh what happened, but just trying to see on paper if what I saw is exactly how I described it. So immediately at the start, Jeff Hardy came out, wants to celebrate, wants to shake everyone's hands, but instead of going to the ring, he just keeps walking into the crowd. And watching this, I actually got vibes of, is he doing what he did in WWE again, where he, at one of those house shows, he's just walking out, he's just doing his own thing, and they're just following him. But no, it turns out there were weapons set up back in the arena area of the crowd, and that's where he met up with Jeff Jarrett, and this sort of commenced the match. Around there, Satnam Singh gets involved, but then Matt Hardy comes out, Ethan Page comes out, everyone comes out and decides they want to play ball. A bucket of blood got poured over Jeff Jarrett and Karen Jarrett, which I just thought, what the hell? Okay, whatever. And it was very thick, whatever it was, because Jeff Jarrett was essentially just red all over for the rest of the match. I want to see if I've got this right. Yeah, so essentially it turned into a brawl between everyone involved. And then eventually, like, they keep battling backstage, but eventually they start making their way back into the ring area. And I mean, who would have thought in-ring action happening of a wrestling match? And then Jarrett gets swanton bombed through a table, which looked like it would be the finish, but then Jay Lethal intervenes and breaks up the pin. Jeff Jarrett comes into the ring holding his guitar slap nuts, but Jeff Hardy manages to intercept it and then decide clock him, Jarrett, that is, with the guitar. And then this is when I truly just thought, what the hell? Now, Jeff Jarrett had been talking about Leatherface coming out, which, for those who don't know, Leatherface is a horror movie monster, so to speak. So I just thought, what does he mean? Turns out it was a guy they hired, I don't know who, comes out with a chainsaw. At first I thought it might have been Chainsaw Charlie, Terry Funk, but obviously it didn't materialize. It turned out to be Leatherface. He came out, he attacked Sonjay Dutt, and then he chases after Karen Jarrett into the back with the chainsaw. Lethal hit Jeff Hardy with a hammer. Satnam Singh chokeslammed Jeff to the ground and then dragged Jarrett on top of Jeff for the win. And for me, this was perfectly described by Taz's expert commentary. Well, that was something. And I thought, Taz, spot on. That was indeed something. I just thought this was insane. And this was, I found out later, meant to be a promotional thing because of Texas Chainsaw Massacre game or something, video game. I don't know, but these promotional matches are sometimes doing my head in, but in this case, I just found it bewildering. Thanasia, what did you think?
Well, I think my thought was when this match was announced, Jeff Hardy versus Jeff Jarrett. I felt like Robin Williams' character from the Jumanji movie when he asked the cop, "What year is it?" Like I just turned around and like, "What's going on here?"
And what
Um,
promotion is it as well? Are we back in?
where are we and when are we? Um, I don't know. Just we saw some interesting stuff during the match. I mean, the whole Leatherface coming out was mind-boggling. And I feel as if the Swanton bomb spot that we got onto the table, it was kind of like Jeff's Hail Mary because he wanted to have a big spot in the match, even though he wasn't going to go over. And clearly he was very into it because, as you say, when he came out and was like walking through the crowd and everyone was like, "What's going on?" He was actually trying to get Hardy chant started, but everyone was too busy just wondering, "What's going on? Where are you going?" Um, but I think the final WTF of the WTF moment is Jeff Jarrett pulls out the Leatherface Championship and he's got a belt with Leatherface's face on it. What was happening in this match? I don't know. But yeah, like you said, these promotional matches, they really are something. Taz has got it right.
Okay. We're gonna end this week with a quiz. And with the hype building up to the Wembley show, I thought it would only be fitting to set this quiz on its predecessor and the event which practically started the rise of AEW. And that is the famous All In pay-per-view from 5 years ago in 2018. So, Thanasi, I've drafted up 10 questions for you on
Oh,
this particular show. For anyone listening that wants to play along, please feel free to do so. And then you can keep a score. I don't know how hard these questions are because I've made them myself. Maybe they're incredibly hard, maybe they're incredibly easy, but we're going to find out together.
let us know in the comments section.
And that's it. Are you ready?
I'm not just ready. I'm all in.
Uh, okay, well, to start off with, in which city did All In take place?
Oh, I'm pretty sure that they did it in Chicago, Illinois.
Show me Chicago, Illinois? Yep, okay. I promise I'm not going to do that for every question.
Please don't.
Yes, Chicago is correct. And just as a tidbit, obviously, for anyone that remembers living it, all the hype at this time was actually built about the expected or anticipated hope of CM Punk making an appearance on the pay-per-view. That didn't materialize, but 5 years later, we've got him back. So all things are doing great for everyone. Question number 2. All In was conceived because of a bet with which wrestling personality who claimed that at the time a Ring of Honor show could never sell out 10,000 tickets at a singular event?
I I seem to recall having remembered the quote or the tweet or something that I think this personality made when it happened. And I remember personally thinking that's absolute bull. Like any promotion could do it if they just did it big enough. Um, and I believe the personality that made this quote was one Dave Meltzer of Wrestling Observer Newsletter.
Dave Meltzer is correct. Yes, indeed. He was quizzed, he was questioned on Twitter by one fan or supporter or reader who inquired as to if it was possible. He said not anytime soon. And then the challenge was laid out, and I think it was accepted by Cody Rhodes officially on Twitter. And then the seeds were sowed for it. Question number 3. This challenge transformed from ROH into a self-funded show that was led chiefly by 3 promoters. Name the 3 promoters for us, Sanase.
Well, 2 of them are still with the company. And I know that they are the Young Bucks. And the third one was referenced in MJF's promo on the show, which was this past week on Dynamite, and that would be Cody Rhodes.
All three correct. Yes, indeed. Cody Rhodes obviously really made a big deal about himself being the one of the promoters, with the complete support and assistance from the Young Bucks. I think for most people, they assume that because the Elite was the fivesome and they went into All Elite Wrestling, that they all were involved in the promoting. But at this time, Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page weren't as worried about promoting. They were still worried about just honing their own skills and working in the ring. But yeah, this event proved quite successful. And this leads us into question number 4, which is how long did it take for the event to sell out all their tickets? Famously.
This was actually surprisingly quick. I'm going for somewhere between 1 hour or 30 minutes. And I think I'm going to go with an hour.
Thanasi, you had it. You had it in the palm of your hand. It famously sold out in what they claim as under 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Now, obviously, there are some reservations about that because can you ever truly sell out that quickly? Like there are all these little like extra seats every now and then. But yes, it famously sold out in under 30 minutes, which was an excellent little reminder of the impression that independent wrestling can leave on others if you put enough resources into it.
And can I just point out for everyone listening, we are doing this as a shoot. I don't know the answers. Dimitri's just prepared these randomly on the day, so I have no clue what the answers are.
Yes. We've made reference to them already, so this should be fairly easy for you. 3 future AEW World Champions wrestled on this particular show. Can you name all of them?
Yes, I can. I know Chris Jericho was on the show, but he didn't appear in a wrestling capacity. He was masked. I think he was wearing maybe like a Penta El Zero Miedo mask or something. So that's not him. And I know that Kenny Omega was on the show. I think he was defending one of his IWGP belts at the time. And I'm pretty sure Hangman was on the card as well. The third one, I'm fairly sure was MJF, and I think he opened the show, and now he's going to main event the next one. He should have main evented the most recent Dynamite, actually, but he's definitely going to be main eventing All In 2, All In 2023, and he opened 2018. Am I right?
You are right with all 3, and I must say I prepared these questions in advance of this week's Dynamite. So when MJF had his promo exchange and heavily referenced All In, it did kind of annoy me because I thought that's something that people might not actually remember. But then he did everything possible to remind everyone of his prior relationship with the All In brand. So that I was a bit annoyed, but it was a good promo. So obviously we have to. I have to let it go. Next question. Christopher Daniels wrestled a celebrity on this show. Which celebrity did he wrestle?
I do know the answer to this. And it's a person, actually, I think, in one way, it was the first person or one of the first people to make the jump from WWE into this new independent all-in, all elite wrestling kind of thing. And it is the star of the new season 2 Heels show, Stephen Amell.
That is correct. This was continuing Stephen Amell's relationship with Cody Rhodes and what was developing into his relationship with the Bullet Club or the Elite at the time. And yeah, as we've seen as well as you've referenced on the show Heels, he's really showing off his love for professional wrestling. And this was a solid outing for someone who is not known for wrestling at all. I think it helped having a veteran like Christopher Daniels in there, and it was a fairly interesting bout between the two.
Even a table spot.
Even a table spot. So it was all in all a fun little a fun little surprise and addition that helps add to the entertainment part of the business. Next question. What was the longest match of the night?
Oh, this one, I think I'm gonna struggle with this one. I seem to recall that they had to cut the show very soon after the main event ended, and that was the Bucks in the main event. So I don't think it was the main event. And I've got a feeling that Nick Aldis versus Cody Rhodes was shorter than I was anticipating. So I'm gonna go with I want to go with Kenny Omega's match, but I can't remember his opponent. So by default, I'm going to just go with Cody Rhodes versus Nick Aldis for the NWA title.
That is incorrect.
Oh.
And neither was the Kenny Omega match, which he wrestled Penta El Zero. The real, the answer for this question was Kazuchika Okada versus Marty Scurll. They had a 26-minute long match, and this was building up the feud where the whole story of this match was basically Marty Scurll can't hang with Kazuchika Okada, and everyone, including his friends, was saying there's no way you can handle it. So I think this was their way of trying to show him in a good light, trying to give him some attention. But yeah,
yes. Yeah, this was before Marty Scurll actually dropped out of the Elite and the Bullet Club thing. He was still part of the group, yes.
Cody Rhodes notably won which championship on this pay-per-view?
I said it before. He won the National Wrestling Alliance World's Championship off of one Nick Aldis. I think it's the first father-son combo to have done it.
That's absolutely correct. Something very historic, and I'm sure at the time made him feel very close to his late father. This particular match saw a number of people come out in the corners of both Nick Aldis and Cody Rhodes. Can you name 4 of the people that came out for either of them?
Oh, God, probably not. Let's see. I know DDP was one. Diamond Dallas Page was one. I want to say Jake the Snake Roberts was another. Who else would have been there? Perhaps Dustin Rhodes, maybe for Cody. And who's another one? I remember the entourage was a lot of people for both sides, and I honestly remember being like, who are all these people? I'm just gonna go with let's go with MJF. No, I'll take that back. Let's go with Brandy Rhodes.
Are you going to lock in those 4 guesses?
I'm going to lock in those 4. How'd I go?
Okay. Well, it's a good thing you said Brandy, because that was correct. I was waiting for you to say that. I thought that was the obvious one, actually. You were correct with DDP as well.
Yep.
He did come out in the corner of Cody Rhodes. They're famously very tight. Jake the Snake Roberts did not make an appearance in either of their corners, and nor did Dustin Rhodes. So the missing people you could have guessed from were Tommy Dreamer of ECW fame, Glacier, who I have no idea who that is, but fair enough, Jeff Jarrett, Samuel Shaw, aka Dexter Lumis, who is now known in WWE, Sean Daivari, and Tim Storm.
Tim Storm, yes. And Tim Storm was the one that Nick Aldis beat for the title.
That is correct.
Yes.
Final question for you, Thanasi, and this is the big one. What was the tagline for All In?
Surely the tagline was just All In, or Are You All In? Something like that. I go, surely, right?
No, the tagline was not "Are you all in?" The tagline was "the biggest independent wrestling show ever."
Oh, okay.
And the reason I bring this up is because now, after All In selling close to 80,000 tickets, the tagline for this All In is "the biggest wrestling show ever." So they're really hyping it up, and I think we're very excited for what All In's going to bring. This brings us to the end of this week's edition of the Audible Finish. Next week, in addition to reviewing the weekly shows, we'll also be giving our predictions for the fast approaching All In Wembley show. Thanasi, in the quiz, you got, I believe, 6 or 7 right, which 6 or 7 out of 10 is pretty good. Let's see how you fare in the predictions next week, huh?
Oh, well, I think the predictions are going to be quite close between us. I think we tend to have similar guesses when it comes to these matches. But yeah, that quiz was, I think that was a good difficulty for me, but I think we'll let the audience tell us how hard it actually was, or how easy it was, and how awful and how rubbish I went.
Well, we'll see how it goes. Thank you again for your company, Thanasi. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And until next time, we hope everything you do is just too sweet.